This is a PowerPoint about the relationship between Timothy Mission and Jacobstown Baptist Church as they work together with an outreach to the Philippines. Timothy Mission is the name that we chose for the work that we do. We primarily train pastors and plant churches, and that's what the model for missions is as far as we're concerned, as far as we saw from the first missionary, the Pharisee Paul. And so Timothy was apparently his first student, and so he's like the icon of missions, and so that's why we came up with the name Timothy. We are ministry associates with Johnny and Friends International Disability Ministry. That means that there is a memorandum of agreement between their organization and ours, that we find ourselves to be in agreement doctrinally, and we find ourselves to be in agreement as to sound accountability and funds, finances, the management of finances. And so we work together, and they call us ministry associates. We also work in partnership with Children's Bible Ministries, based out of New Zealand, so I have a lot of Kiwi friends. And we work together with an organization known as PREACH, Philippine Reformed Evangelical Association of Churches. And don't get all nervous and itchy when you see the word Reformed. This group is not hyper-Calvinist, but we do all agree that the five solas are a sound way of approaching ministry and considering the value of the Bible. Our accountability financially is through Central Missionary Clearinghouse out of Texas, and this is a very good organization. Unlike mission agencies that are known by the name of mission boards, this agency here, when a donation is given towards the ministry, they take $2.50 from each check that comes in just for processing. They do not take sometimes as much as 30% of the funds that come in for a missionary to help run their board and run their multi-million-dollar headquarters. That was very appealing to us, that we could associate with a group like Central Missionary Clearinghouse. We serve in the Philippines. There are 7,000 plus islands in the Philippines. There are 170 different dialects there as well. At first, we were down on this island, which is, that you see the red dot on it, which is Mindanao. And we began our ministry there, but then we felt led to separate from the organization we were with and establish our own ministry. And that ministry found us ending up here, where you see the red dot, on the island of Mindoro. What do? The purpose statement says to train, equip, and assist indigenous pastors to plant churches, to reach their people with the gospel through teaching sound doctrine, to minister, to evangelize and disciple the poor, the orphaned, and the disabled, and to equip churches and individuals in the Philippines and the USA to do likewise, and to partner with other ministries of like doctrine when appropriate to accomplish our purpose. And I'd like to just have you keep a picture in your mind of this frame and the next one. This is the kind of thing you can find in the city of Manila. If you go to the Philippines, you go to Manila and put blinders on, you could almost think you were in the USA. If you take the blinders off, you'll see a very different story. But keep these pictures in mind as we go through this set of slides. One of the things we do is pastor training. This is my very good friend, Pastor Leo Ordiales. He has a doctorate degree from a seminary in Manila. His thesis for the doctorate degree was church planting in the rural Philippines. So he's just a great guy to have working with me, working for me to work alongside of and help out and support him in what he does. Here you see him holding one of the training classes for a group of pastors. It was a providential meeting with Pastor Ordiales. I was riding on a boat back from Mindoro to the main island, and I was coming from the city of Calapan. That's not where tourists go. So I was the only puti, the only white person on the boat, and Pastor Leo kind of surmised that I must be a missionary. So he approached me and he said, "Excuse me, are you a missionary?" And that began a relationship that has gone on now for at least 20 of the 22 years. And we have good fellowship together, and we've worked together and managed to get a lot of different pastors trained in ministry. This is just a sample of what some of the classes are. Pastor Leo has been able to get back to teaching face-to-face, which is his passion, which he enjoys the most. And there's about 2 or 3 groups this size every year that go through training with him, and in things like theology, hermeneutics, or specific book studies. And it's a great help to them, and it helps them do a far better job in ministering to their people. During the pandemic, he was teaching via Zoom, and I still teach via Zoom from the USA to other groups that he's not working with. Within the church planting, this is where it gets right down to a specific group of people that we have worked with, that I have worked with. Pastor Leo has taught, but I've actually lived and worked with these people that you see here, and mentored them, encouraged them, and they've been 100 times more an encouragement to me. Down here in this bottom left frame is Glenda Rio. She is the widow of Pastor Rio, who we worked with from the beginning in starting the first church plant that became known as Saved by Christ Church. After his passing, Glenda didn't give up. Sad, yes, all of us would be. But she kept going, she kept serving the Lord, and she has done a tremendous job as church administrator and in the outreach to the Mangyang tribes. She organizes those activities. She goes along to visit the tribes, to teach the tribes. She's managed to get people that didn't know how to read and never went to school in all their life to learn how to read. And as a result of them being able to read, they now are able to be given Bibles and read the Bibles, which they're hungry for, unlike sometimes here in the States. You can see from the color of Sonny's hair that he's been around a little while, just like me. Sonny, Pastor Rio, and myself, we're like the 3 Musketeers, and Sonny and I have been together in ministry there on Mindoro for the full 22 years that I've been in service. And Sonny's passion, besides caring for his own flock and his own little church, is to plant churches. And he goes out, roams around, strikes up conversations with people, plays his guitar, pulls out his Bible, starts sharing some things that he understands about the Bible that he thinks are important for them to understand too. And in time, there's bigger groups than just the first household he meets, and small churches are formed, and within that we were able to provide pastors for those churches from men that have gone through the work and the teaching that we gave them. This was the original church of Saved by Christ Church. The upper portion is a residence for a farmer. The bottom portion was storage for the rice that was harvested. And it became our church. It was used in World War II by the Japanese as a headquarters for the troops assigned to keep the island of Mindoro occupied. And it was adequate for many years, but the church kept growing in number, and a day came when we really kind of needed to move out and find someplace else to meet. Then the day came that Jacobstown got its boots on the ground. John and Lori DeMarco and Caitlin and Molly Black went with me to the Philippines and helped us do some outreach, going around from neighborhood to neighborhood, setting up, doing music, giving testimonies, and Pastor Rio would finish up with a message. And it was a very fruitful time. There's something I told those people when we started to go to the Philippines. I suggested they do not eat balut, which is a delicacy for some in the Philippines. Balut is where they take a fertilized egg that is partially developed, and many just bury it in the ground for a long period of time. And then when they think the time's just right, they dig them up, they break them open, and they eat the contents. It's not something I've ever done, but I admonish them not to do it. However, what you see here is Molly when I wasn't around. I guess she forgot what I said because she ate a balut. I don't know whether she liked it or not for sure, but if you ever go to the Philippines with me, I still recommend you don't eat the balut. This is a picture of Pastor Rio at one of the outreaches where we would do music, give a message, and in this case, we prayed for the lot that we set up and was doing the outreach on, asking God if he would provide that lot as a place to build a church, since we had outgrown the little farmer's house. This is God's answer. This is the lot that we stood on and prayed for. And that church is the Saved by Christ Church number 2 after leaving the rice barn. And this church cost Jacobstown nothing, didn't cost anybody in America 1 penny. The story is that we were sitting, Pastor Rio and I, and praying just about the very fact of wanting some land, wanting a church, asking God to provide. And then this Asian person came walking in, and didn't seem like he was Filipino. It turns out he was a Korean. And he said to Pastor Rio, he said, "Are you Pastor Rio?" And he, of course, Pastor Rio said yes. And he said, "Well, we've heard about your ministry. And we have a ministry out of South Korea in that we build churches for fledgling churches, the actual church building. So we've decided we're going to do that for you." And this is what was the result. They built a church with a Sunday school on the side, and it was just amazing. But that's the way God does things. He provides when it's his timing. And then it was Ed's turn to go to the Philippines. And it was Ed's turn to do baptisms there. He had the honor to do that. And in fact, to my knowledge, these are Mangyongs. These are tribal people. And these are the first Mangyongs, to my knowledge, to ever be baptized on the island of Mindoro. Ed had that privilege. Well, Ed really got a heart for the Mangyongs. And when he found out their story, he decided to help out in a special way. The Mangyongs that you see here lived on the mountain just like the rest of the tribes. But there's conflict on the mountains between the communists and the Philippine army, and it's kind of dangerous. Sometimes the Mangyungs get caught in the crossfire. So the chief of this tribe decided to bring the people down to the lowlands and get away from the conflict. But what happened was they would just, not knowing any better, start picking up sticks and building huts on any space they could find. And the rice farmers would come along and see them and kick them out, say, "Get out of here, this is my farm, go away." And this kept happening, and after a while, the situation was that the tribe would have maybe one family here where they were able to get away with setting up a hut, and then a few miles away, another family. And the chief was very upset because his tribe was not together as a tribe. So what happened was that kind of touched Ed's heart, and funds that the church gave Ed to be his pocket money, just to use while he was on the field there, he gave it all to purchase land for the Mangyungs. So we purchased the land, and it's in the title of the Saved by Christ Church. The deed is named to them, and we took the chief down to this lot, and he was told, "This is where you can build your village." And he was just blown away. He kind of thought, well, but they'll kick us out. And we explained, no, this is your place to build. It belongs to the church. We're not going to chase you away. And they built their village there. They chose to build the homes just like they would have up on the mountain. That's what they preferred. Sadly, one day there was a fire and burned them all down. And Jacobstown Church rallied again and provided money to buy materials to reconstruct. Only this time, because of the fire, we were able to convince them to make a little different house, a little more substantial. And so we put up buildings that had metal roofing, plywood sides, concrete foundations, and they were very happy to have those homes, and instead of having their traditional home. But then the day came, after all those successes with Ed, that he ended up a street person stuck in an airport. Just kidding, Ed. He deserved the rest that he needed on the flight home. I mentioned that there's conflict up on the mountain. The bottom picture is Muslims on the island of Mindanao that we would encounter from time to time when we lived down there. And when we moved north, I thought, well, at least we won't have that struggle up here on Mindoro. But no, up in the Mindoro are the NPA, the New People's Army, the communist movement. One of the sad things about the communist movement, you can see in these two pictures here at the top, they recruit children, and they use children to help them in their combat against the Philippine army. I call them enemies sent by the enemy, because our enemy Satan is happy when these organizations, we'll call them these armies, they keep us from getting up on the mountain to minister to the tribes from time to time. There's another aspect to our ministry, and we base it on what we call the John 14 mandate, which says, "Go quickly into the streets and the alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." "Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there's still room." Then the master told his servant, "Go out to the roads and the country lanes and make them come in, so that my house may be full." God wants the disabled ministered to also, not just the able-bodied. And so we take that as the Luke 14 mandate. And we wish more churches would take it as a mandate as well, because there's very few people in the churches that are disabled. Look around at your church and see how many disabled people attend. One of the things we do with Joni and Friends and the disability ministry on the state side is to do what is called a Wheels for the World wheelchair collection. Here you see where in a little town in Martinsburg, we were able to collect 200 wheelchairs. There's used wheelchairs everywhere, in the backs of garages, up in attics, wheelchairs that are no longer needed by the person that was using them. And what we do with these wheelchairs, if they are collected, these are collected all over the country with Wheels to the World activities, but the ones collected in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, after we collect them, we load them up and take them to Graterford Prison near Philadelphia. There, the prisoners have been trained on how to do a really good job of refurbishing the old and beat up wheelchairs. Eventually, those wheelchairs are loaded onto containers and shipped to countries where in advance a pastor, a good church, a sound doctrine have been identified, and then a team from the States goes over and meets up with the wheelchairs and the pastor, and they have a day or two of distributing wheelchairs to people that do not have them. And also they're given the Bible, and the pastor works with them, and the pastor continues follow-up with them after the day that they receive the wheelchair. And these are usually in countries that really don't have any access to wheelchairs at all. In the Philippines, it's possible to just supply funds, and then we can purchase wheelchairs in country. They're manufactured in China, but it's better still to purchase them there than the expense of shipping a bunch of wheelchairs all the way from the States. But we also have the blessing in Manila of a place called the House with No Steps. It's this little manufacturing area that you see here on the right. And what they do is they bring in people that need wheelchairs, they measure them, they check out the kind of disability they have, and they'll make custom-made wheelchairs for the people that choose to come there to get them. And what you see here is Kim, like in the poem Kim with Rudyard Kipling, and he is receiving the wheelchair that was manufactured for him. Now Kim is a resident of the Home for Disabled Children that God used Judy and I to get established there in the Philippines. There are times when the person that has a disability comes to us, and surgeries would help them to overcome that disability and be able to walk. And when that happens, we supply the funds and get them to the doctors and get them the surgery that they need. What you see here is the building that JBC helped us put up. This is the Bahay Pag-ibig at Habag, which is House of Love and Compassion. This is the home for disabled children that we put up in the Philippines. It's on the property of Children's Bible Ministries, which I showed you the logo of in the beginning. Children's Bible Ministries has been there for a while. They developed a compound. They have an orphanage for able-bodied children. They have a Christian school and a Bible college to train pastors. I was having great difficulty in putting up a home for disabled children on the island of Mindoro. The things we needed to bring together to be able to do that just weren't happening. And I was a little discouraged, but then I got stubborn and said, no, we're going to keep doing something. Maybe God has a different plan for us to do in disability ministry. And I'd heard that Children's Bible Ministry had an outreach where they would go out to the town and minister to disabled people. on the streets in their homes. So I went up there to visit them just to see how they do disability ministry. I thought, well, maybe we are not supposed to build a home, but we can do disability ministry on Mindoro and model it after these people here. They showed me around, they talked about the ministry, and then we sat down and had dinner. And at that point they said, well, what is your goal? What is your plans? And I explained the plight of having too many obstacles to be able to put a home for disability kids on Mindoro. So they listened, they said that was interesting, and that sort of thing. And then we broke up for dinner, and I was out sitting outside talking with a bunch of Filipino friends and that I had made there real quickly because it's easy to make friends with the Filipinos. And then the director of the compound came walking down where we were sitting and said, come here, I want to show you something. And she took me over, showed me an empty lot that was between the orphanage and the school. She said, that'd be a good place to put a home for disabled children, wouldn't it? And I said, yeah. He said, well, if you want it, it's yours. That's how God does things, just like he did with the church on Mindoro that we were praying for. They said, you can build it here. One of the struggles on Mindoro was finding someone that was willing to leave the main island and the, quote, luxuries of Manila and live in the more rural area that was a licensed social worker. We couldn't get one. So the other thing, besides supplying the land to put the home for disabled children on, is they said right there in the orphanage is a social worker, and there's no reason why she can't take on a few more folders of the kids that are in this home that you're going to put up for us. So they said, it's yours, but they also said, now you have to show us what should this building be and how do we take care of these people. Well, we did all that, and thank God and thank JBC, the Home for Disabled Kids became a reality. And this is what you can see here happens when they are able to get surgery. Now, this child is not fully recovered from surgery and still in therapy to learn how to walk well, but she could not walk at all when she came to us and had spent her life just sitting in the back room of her house, not going to school. And as you can see here, at this age, she's finally getting to walk. And it was at this age that she was able to begin going to school, because she's no longer being hidden in the back room by her mom. She's living here in this home for disabled children and learning to walk.
Pagod?
So that gives you just a glimpse of the home that JBC helped us build. And you see one of the other disabled kids come through the door. But it's a great place, and God's doing great work for those kids there. Now I'd like you to be able to see, where do these kids come from? They don't all come from a normal house like you and I live in. Many of them come from the streets of the cities in the slums. And here you see where some families have taken culverts that aren't being used and turned them into a, quote, home. This is the kind of place that they come from. And Smoky Mountain is a famous place in Manila, well known. And this is where these children that we, the families of these children that we bring into the home, where some of them go to get their groceries. It's the city dump. And I'm not lying, I'm not kidding. The parents go out, they roam around the city dump, they find chicken breasts that have had all the meat picked off and eaten by somebody that was able to go to get Kentucky Fried Chicken. Places like that that are in Manila, or just other pieces of meat where they got, scraps on the bone. They will collect those things. They will take them back to where they live, pick off all the little pieces, put them in a pot, put water on it, boil it forever, and then have it for dinner. And that's the truth. So one of the things that happened to me by living overseas is I can't relate a lot of times to people in the States anymore when they start whining about the things that they think are problems. I think it's damage done to missionaries that we don't always talk about, but you can see, you think you got problems. These folks have problems. These are some of the kids that are living nearby Smoky Mountain. And this young lady, I call her the charcoal kid because her job is to take the hard shell from coconut, and they have a way of turning it into charcoal, and then they use that to do their cooking on. So keep in mind, they don't have showers, they don't have bathtubs. Going home and getting clean after work is a project, and hauling water in a bucket and just standing there outside getting scrubbed down and buckets of water dumped on you. That's their life. We try to rescue those that we can, and it's only a tip of the iceberg, but at least we're getting to some. And what we are planning on doing and trying to get launched now is establishing another home for disabled kids in another area of the Philippines further north above Manila. Now, just so you don't feel discouraged, this is Galai, the young lady that was walking with the walker going into the home for disabled kids, and this is her now. So maybe this will help you be less discouraged after seeing the other films or the other frames. Now her gait is still not great in this video, but she's walking to school in the morning. And I'm happy to report that since this video was taken, she's continued to work at walking. And now if we had a video to show you, you would see that she walks much, much better than she did in this video. And if you're interested, you can go to YouTube, search AKA Galai, and it's spelled Gelai. And you can see a video there of her story, a short piece of her story there, if you're interested in finding out more about this young lady. But praise the Lord, look how she's going. When previously she could not walk at all and spent her days in the back room of a house.
Padala mo na yung gamit mo.
So like I said, if you want to, you can search for AKA Gelai, Gelai. Now, there's a strong biblical mandate to help others. Okay, one of many portions of scripture that tell us that is found in Deuteronomy. It says, if there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your poor brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs. Give generously to him and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and towards the poor and the needy in your land. It's the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 15. But there's another way that I would like to read this to you. I took the liberty of editing God's Word. That's maybe a little shaky. But just temporarily for this purpose, I want to read you the version that I reworked because it is something that JBC really needs to hear. There is a poor man among your brothers in the towns of the land that the Lord your God gave you. You, Jacobstown Church, were not hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your brother. Rather, you were open-handed and freely gave him whatever he needed. You gave generously to him and did so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God blessed you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. And we understand that blessing is not Joel Osteen, I'm going to get rich if I follow God. That blessing is seeing the fruit from your service. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I commend you for being open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and the needy in your world. So that's the story. Maybe I stumbled and bumbled through it, but it's a story Jacobstown deserves to hear. Maybe others will see this just to understand what our ministry is. But the partnership that God created between JBC and Judy and I 22 years ago has been amazing and has borne much fruit for His glory. And I thank you very much.